Welcome to class 4. We will be diving deep into natural building to code. So, what does it mean to do a natural building to code? Let's get started. We will cover the design process for natural buildings, topics like passive solar design, understanding what size structure is needed, finding the right site for the building, working with your budget, and getting clear on the vision with the end in mind. So let's start with passive solar design. I'm sure you probably have heard of it before. If you haven't, it really just means that you want your house to face the south if you're in the northern hemisphere, or if you're in the southern hemisphere, you want to make sure your house faces north. So it's basically you want your house to face towards the sun. You want to have lots of windows on the south, um, and you want to be able to catch that winter sun. So that's really the goal for the passive solar design. The object is to try to get the sun to come through the windows and to heat the walls so that they can absorb that warmth and then release it through the evening or when it's cold. So, in most cases, with conventional building, it doesn't really work to have a passive solar design unless you have a wall that can absorb the heat. So, that means you need to have a wall that has thermal mass. Thermal mass basically means like a concrete wall, that's thermal mass, or a brick wall, something that's solid. It's not insulative. There's not holes. It's not air gaps or air bubbles or air trapping like the way insulation does. It actually is dense. It's something that I'm sure you've noticed that when you're in the summertime and you touch the concrete floor, you touch the driveway, or even the side of concrete buildings. You know how warm it is and how it's radiating that heat. Even at nighttime, I know sometimes, like when we were in Las Vegas, we would walk through, and you would have the cool air in the evening, but the buildings were radiating so much heat that you can feel the gusts of warm air coming from the buildings. So that's thermal mass. So in our buildings, in natural buildings, because we use cob, which is again clay, sand, and straw, and it's densely packed, and it's usually somewhere between 12 to 18 inches minimum, then that's able to absorb the heat, and then it's able to radiate that heat in the evening when it's cool. We also use earthen floors. So the earthen floor is able to absorb that heat from the sun that's coming through the south, through the windows, and heating the ground and then heating the floor, and it's able to radiate that. And if you're living in a smaller space, then you also notice that your back wall, usually our walls have about an inch of a heavy clay plus an inch of plaster. So you got 2 inches. And even the back walls, the lower part of the back walls, are getting the sun, and it's able to radiate that heat out as well. So that's kind of the benefit of having a dense wall or thermal mass wall. The other part that's important is you want to have big eaves, because the point, obviously, for thermal mass to be able to heat the walls is to have that sun come in. So that sun, when it's low in the winter, is able to come in through the glass and into the floor, into the walls. But in the summertime, when the sun is high, you want to be able to protect yourself from that sun, because you don't want that sun to heat up the inside of your home when it's already hot. So having big eaves, in other words, like a big hat, a brim over the building, is you're shading those windows so the sun that's straight above your house is not able to penetrate the glass, not able to heat the house. And so that really helps to have a big eaves. The other part about it is in the summertime when it is hot, in our area where we live, it's actually pretty cool in the evening. So we have a high desert area. And so that cool air, we open up the windows, and that cool air is able to come in, and it's able to cool the floor, cool the walls. And that same thermal mass is able to absorb the coolness, so that in the morning, we close the windows, we close the blinds, and we're able to have that cool air throughout the day. In some cases, it can last up till 5 until the sun's about to go down. Other cases, on super hot days, it'll last till 3, and it's wonderful. And so then at 3, you go out to the river and take a dip, or you go out to the garden, um, or you just basically open up the windows again and start the whole process. All right, let's move on to the next one. Understanding what size structure is needed. So, really, the most important part about this concept is consider what is what you need right now. So, for example, if you're a single person, you need, let's say, a bedroom or even a loft. Maybe you work from home, and so you need a desk area. You need a small kitchen that's able to kind of be functional for you. You need a living room that can maybe entertain 1 to 5 people. Maybe you need a dining room, that can host again 1 to 5 people. And so, you could probably make do with somewhere between 300 to 500 square foot if you're not including the loft space where your sleeping area and your office could be. So it isn't something that you need. You like you don't need 1,200 to 1,500 to 3,000 square feet. So when you're planning to design your home as a single person, you can start with something small and then kind of work your way up. So you have room for growth. So that's the next stage here is making sure you have uh, room for your family as you grow. And so now you think, okay, now you're married, right? So now that loft, it may be fine for a little bit, but maybe now you wanted to have more of a master bedroom. So you create an addition, or one of your exit doors now becomes part of the entrance to your master bedroom, right? And let's say that you have another door on the other side and you now have kids and you want to have your kids are ready to have their own room. So the other door, say the east and west doors, now become the master bedroom and the kids' bedroom. And then now let's say the north wall, now it can become like a great room or an additional living room or a family room that can be expanded. And then you obviously will create another door in that north side. Or you'll even maybe create another door on the master bedroom side, or another door in the kids' bedroom side, or even maybe you'll expand through the south and say now you'll create like a greenhouse space where you can have outdoor eating that's still protected from the sun, that's protected from the mosquitoes, and you're able to kind of grow your house as you need it. But again, having that plan at the beginning is crucial. So you build for what you need now, but always plan for the future. So, some of the questions that you need to consider when you're making your design: do you work from home? Do you entertain? Do you have guests staying long term? It might be important to have a separate guest house, or maybe even other wing to be a bedroom. So, like the kids' side could be the guest room until you have kids, for example. Um, what rooms do you spend the most time in? That's really important. Do you have a plan, um, that you've looked online and that you found and you're like, "Oh, this is," or maybe even a house that you visited and you're like, "Oh, I really love these plans. I really like this floor plan. This is something that I wanna mimic." So it's important to kinda start absorbing some of that information online and also as you start to visit people. Are baths important? Do you take baths in the evening or in the morning? Because that also makes it a very important concept. If you want to take your bath in the evening, maybe you want to have the sunset. So you want to have your bathroom on the west side because you want to be able to lay in your bath and watch the sunset. Or maybe you're more of a get up in the morning, meditate, and now you want to go and take a bath and watch the sunrise. So then you want to have your bathroom facing the east. Is cooking important? You want to have a functional kitchen. If entertaining and cooking is something that you do, especially if you have friends over, or you and your spouse or you and your kids want to be able to cook. eh, Think about those things. How much space do you need? Is an island important? How much counter space do you want for cutting? You don't always want to be getting in the way of when you're setting the table or you're trying to get things ready when you're cooking and you have to ask people to move so you can pull a drawer out, or you have to ask people to stand out of the way while you're getting to the fridge, or you're cutting uh, or you're taking food into the stove. So you kind of want to have that idea, if cooking is important, entertainment is important, those are the kind of concepts you want to think about. Is TV watching a big part of your life? Maybe you enjoy movies. Maybe you have shows that you like to watch on a consistent basis, and that's part of your evening. That's part of your relaxing, or maybe it's even part of your work. So, having a place where you can have quiet space, where you can have darkness, where you can, turn off the lights and have good surround sound. Like, if those things are important to you, those are things that we need to consider when you're talking about your design. Do you want two stories? Or maybe do you want a single floor plan? Or maybe a loft, like we talked about, maybe a loft is fine. Maybe you want a porch. If you want a loft or a porch, you have to think about where. Where in the building would these make sense? Do you want a mudroom? In our case, like a mudroom is important because when we come in from the rain, living in the country, living in areas where there's lots of dirt everywhere, you want to be able to come in and have a place to put your wet boots, you wet your jacket. Yeah, but you don't want it to be inside, causing the wood floor to get wet and to be able to start to absorb that moisture and then maybe crack the finish or start to warp the finish. So having a mudroom with tile, it's easy to clean, it's easy out of the way, but maybe also you want it to be enclosed, so you want it to be heated because you don't want to go back out to the mudroom to put on your jacket that's still wet and never got a chance to dry. So it's kind of important to think about those things. Um, do you want a pantry? I think pantries are important, but sometimes maybe you don't need it. Maybe you're not a big cook. Maybe you go out to eat more often than you actually cook. Or maybe you have tons of food that you want to prepare. So you need a big pantry. Maybe your pantry is almost like an additional room, especially if you're considering collecting bulk or you're making your own sauces, you're making your own jams, you're canning food, kind of things like that. Utility closets, something that's really rarely thought about for most designers or for most builders is a utility closet. Where are you going to keep your water heater? Where are you going to keep your electric panel? Where are you going to do your, if you're going to have an on-demand water heater? If you're going to do like radiant floor heating, where are you going to keep all the um, heating components, all the regulations or the areas where you're turning up the heat, where people have to fix something. Those are kind of things that are important. Do you want to have two bathrooms? If so, where are you going to locate them? Do you want to have a half bath, for guests, not necessarily someone that's going to be staying and needing a bath, but maybe that's someone that just needs to use the bathroom. It's important to think about how close do you want that to be to the hangout space. You want that half bath to be more private. You want it to be further away from the kitchen, things like that to consider. Do you want to have a master bath? Do you want to have a master closet? If so, how big? Lots of things to consider about, and it's easy to start to get overwhelmed, and it's easy to start thinking big, like, oh no, I want to have this, I want to have that. But again, if you don't start from the very beginning where you consider what is that you need right now, you can get overwhelmed by creating things that you wish you had, right? You things that you want to have. There's a difference between the want and what you need. And so when you're making design, especially with the limited budget, you don't want to go too far into the want. You want to go more into the need, and then the want will come later. Okay, let's move on. Finding the right site for your building, really important. You want to make sure, especially for passive solar design, you want to look something that's has a south slope or south facing slope. It's important if you're looking at a property and you see that the property is north facing, it's going to take a long time for that sun to get all the way around. And by the time it does, especially in the winter, you may only get 2 or 3 hours of heat coming into your window. So it's important to find something that's south facing. Um, you want to also have some trees for shade in the summer. Think about that. It's important. Least amount of excavation. You don't want to have to go and pay. It's $1,000 a day to have an excavator on site. So you want to make sure that that's something that is limited. You don't want to be excavating for weeks at a time just to get your house to the right location, the right depth. View is important, so you want to see if you have a view. Especially for what's important to you: sunrises, sunsets. Where's that view? Having a good site design. So considering like where fire truck's gonna turn around, how far the setbacks are from other property lines, the neighbors, how the driveway is going to get to the house. How long, the length of it. Um, the water, the septic location, that's also important. Uh, Location to the nearest fire hydrant. So in case you may have to add a fire hydrant if you're too far away. So that's something important, and that could be costly in the long run. Sometimes it can be like $7,000 to $8,000 to get a fire hydrant close enough to your property. So that's something to consider. Water tank location. So if you're not hooked up to the city, you don't have city sewer, and you have to think about water location. Where are you going to locate your tanks? And sometimes even if you are going to be within the city, but you want to have rainwater catchment for your gardens, or you want to be able to have water security and store a cistern underneath your property or on your property, it's important to think about that location as well. And obviously, I think one of the most important parts for self-sustainable living, natural living, is garden location. You don't want to take the best sun spot for your house. You actually want to leave that for your garden. So many times we'll go up to a site with clients and they'll say, "This is the spot where I want the house right here. It's flat, it's open, you can see for miles." And then we're like, "That's great, but this is an amazing spot for a garden." So, I mean, if you're not going to have a garden and it's not important to you, no problem. But if you want to be self reliant, you want to be able to grow your own food, you want to be able to not be dependent if something happens, then maybe you should leave the spot for your garden. At least have an option. Maybe even think about maybe fruit trees within a certain area. So lots of things to consider. Moving on. Working with your budget. So that's important. So first of all, you want to research, ask around, what is the price per square foot to build in your area? It's different for every area. I mean, California has one of the highest per square foot building costs, but that may not be the case for you. And it differs between one side of California to the other side. San Diego, LA area, it's way more expensive. San Francisco, way more expensive than when we are. But there's other counties that are cheaper than we are for building. So it really just depends on where you live. Um, and it can vary between $50 to $100 a square foot, just depending on where you are. So ask around, ask professional builders, what is the cost per building? Natural building has its own price, and it is important for you, if you can, contact a natural builder who has been building, that know that area and know the cost to build naturally in that area. But if you don't, natural building isn't that much more expensive than, say, a custom home. So don't go to a subdivision where they're making cookie cutter homes and it's all specked out. You want to talk to somebody that's made a custom home, designed it themselves, or designed it with a builder, or designed it with an architect, and you want to get a cost per square foot for that kind of home, because that's what you're doing with your natural building home. You are building a custom home that's made just for you. So that's the price to look at. Then you want to look at your budget. You want to see how much money you have saved up. How much can you afford? If you're going to do this as a loan, you want to know how much money you need to have down payment. Most loans for new construction, you have to have 20 to 30% down. So you want to make sure you have that. And I would suggest having more, because working with the bank on a new construction is incredibly difficult, because they do not want to pay your contractors until the job is done. They don't want to give you the money until they inspect it. And so your contractors have to be able to float the bill until your bank approves their work, until it's inspected, and then they'll give you the money and then you can pay them. So finding contractors or subcontractors that work with new construction banks is important. And a lot of the builders who are established and who are doing custom homes, ask them, what banks do your clients use? What's the best bank that you have found to work with? Who pays the fastest? What's just the least amount of red tape that we have to go through? These builders will tell you all day long what the tricks are. And it's going to save you a lot of time. It's going to save you a lot of headache. So ask, don't be afraid. Don't start building until you have all the money to finish, plus 20% for contingencies. So If you are going to get a loan, have your down payment, which is either 20 or 30%, and then you want to have 20% on top of that of your total cost of building, because that 20% is going to be important if you have to wait for banks to approve, if you have to buy materials now, especially because of this the COVID situation with materials being so delayed. Sometimes you have to buy stuff months ahead, and the bank is not going to be okay with that. They're going to be like, well, you're not ready to buy that. You have to wait. And so you need to use your money to buy it, and then you'll get reimbursed once you get to that stage. So have the contingency. If you're going to do it all cash, again, have all the cash to finish on hand plus your 20%. If you don't have the budget to build exactly what you want, see if there's some phases that you can build. So it's important to just have a plan. Once you have the drawings, once you have the engineering, once you have the site, once you have the idea, then you can say, okay, well, let's start again, like that concept we spoke about earlier. Let's start with a small, kitchen, dining room, living room area with a loft, 300 to 400 square feet, maybe 500 max with a little loft, make another 600 or 400, you know? So that's your start. Can you afford that? Is that not a good way to go? If you're going to be building it yourself, let's say you don't have any kids, any family, you're going to be doing it all on your own, get a trailer, live in the trailer and work on the home after work on the weekends. Buy the material, you have it. Great. But don't hire anyone. If you're hiring us to do it, if you're hiring a builder to do it, they're going to want that money up front. And it's expensive. Building is expensive. So make sure you can afford what it is you want to build. And if you can't, do it yourself. That's the best way to do it. Come take our classes, join our workshops. Okay. Um, so we're building in phases. The shell cost is different than the finished cost. So want to make sure if you're asking a builder, make sure you be really clear. You want the finished cost estimate, not the shell cost. We always give our clients the shell cost because I can't tell you what the finished cost is going to be because I can't tell you what windows you're going to choose or what roofing style you're going to choose or what countertops or what lights or what fixtures you're going to choose, what floor, what granite, tile, toilets. Everything changes between super cheap to very expensive. So I always give my clients the shell cost. And then on top of that, they can do the research or they can hire one of our consultants to help them pick all the finishes. And then they can start with the finishes and work their way backwards if they know the shell cost. So in our cases, our shell cost is around $234 a square foot. On average, with finishes, the cost can go somewhere between $350 a square foot to $500 a square foot for super custom. All right, the design process. Once you are clear on the vision, once you know what you want, then you start the design process. So the design basically is something that you can work with an architect, you can work with a person that does the drawings, you can work with a consultant, you can work with a natural builder that does the design and build. You can contact us, we can help you with the drawings. And basically, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have two or three floor plans to kind of choose from. So again, we were talking earlier about finding floor plans online or friends of that have floor plans that you enjoy, that you like, and with those floor plans, then you can start to kind of merge things together. So you should combine parts of all of the plans that, especially of the things that you like about the plans. Obviously, get rid of stuff that you don't like about the plans, and then come up with one plan, marrying them all together. Once that floor plan is done, you will start with the window layouts. So once you have the floor plan, then you can say, okay, I want windows here and here. I want doors. I want them to swing this way. So you start to kind of get the floor plan. Then you can start to get the idea of the layout of the windows and the doors. Then you will come up with a roof plan. So when you have the floor plan, then you have an idea of like, how do I want my roof to go? I want it to be facing south. I want it to be a gable end roof. I want it to be a hip roof. I want it to be a shed roof. Lots of options. I recommend you talking to a designer, talking to an architect, or talking to a natural builder that's experienced with design and build, and then they will help you kind of give you an idea of what's doable if you've not done this before. Um, Once you approve the elevations, they'll draw it out for you so you can see the front view with the roof, with the window layout. Then you're ready to start the construction drawings. Again, ideally, the architect or the designer or the builder, design build company can help you with that. Let's go a little bit about the engineering process. The engineering will need two sets of plans. One is going to be the floor plan, and the other one's going to be the site plan. And the floor plan is you're going to have the elevations and the structural drawings. So typically, your architect would do that, or your designer would be able to do that, or your design and build company will be able to do that. Um, Structural drawings it will include like a foundation plan. They'll include the framing plan. They'll include the roof plan and the beam layouts if you're going to have beams. There's also going to be a section in the plans that are going to have the detail drawings, which include like a section of the connections, like how the roof is connected, um, how the rafters are connected to the top plates, how the beams are connected to the posts, how the floor joists are connected to the wall plates. Just a bunch of jargon that probably you don't need to know right this minute, but it's just part of the process. Um, Also, on those detail plans, you'll have the nailing patterns, like how many nails do the plates to the studs get, the headers to the kings, the rim joists to the floors, the rafters to the plates, blocking to the rafters, and the shear walls. How many nails do they want? So if you don't know these things, which most of us don't, unless you've done this before, or you're an experienced builder, or an architect, or an engineer, you're not going to know these things. So it's important to make sure your architect, your engineer may even tell you. You may just draw it up, and he'll just or she will tell you this is what you need your nails, and they'll do all the details for you, and then you just put those on your plans. Or you have a builder designer who knows what they're doing, and they'll be able to kind of get the ball rolling. And sometimes the engineers will add more or say, "Oh, that's not needed." So anyway, there's a lot more to that. We'll move on. Let's talk a little bit about working with an experienced team. So having a team of architects, designers, and engineers and builders would be great, but can you afford it? That's the question. Um, if you can't, the next best thing would be to find someone that can help you make sense of it all. So having a consultant, having a design build company, um, having a natural builder that's experienced doing this to code, contacting us. We would love to help you with that. Um, Find someone that has done natural building to code before. It's important because even sometimes when we started, we contacted an architect and we were like, "Hey, this is what we want to do," and I mean, it was just like constantly, "No, you can't do that. No, that's not possible. No, that won't pass the code." And so I had to teach myself to be the architect. So I read the codes. I found, the timber framing code. I found the straw bale code. I found the rammed earth code. And then I married all those codes together to create the code that we use to pass all our natural buildings. So I was able to learn, YouTube University, learned SketchUp, learned how to do layout. I learned how to put plans together. I submitted my first plans. The county told me what they needed. I sent it to the engineer. The engineer told me what I needed to add. So it was just a growing process and a learning process. But because everyone was telling me no, this couldn't be done when I first started trying to do this to code, I had no other choice. But nowadays, there are a lot of people who are doing natural building to code. There are a lot of architects who understand and are willing to look at other people who have done it successfully and mimic what they're doing and learn from what they're doing. And they're happy to learn that because they want to have that niche in their market. So If you want to learn how we've done it, you can contact us and we can consult with you and we can consult with your architect, your engineer, and your builder, and we can help share all the plans, no problem, so that they can see how it's been done. Especially because in California, we have one of the most restrictive building codes. We have to, especially where I live in Northern California, we have to go with Tahoe snow loads. We have to go with San Francisco earthquake restrictions, and we have to go with the fire. So we have three massive criterias that we have to be able to pass through all of our buildings. So our buildings are easily passable through anywhere in the country and possibly anywhere in the world. I mean, maybe depending on the country. Okay. Um, Use a consultant if you can, or educate yourself. That's a you can always come to us at the Natural Living School and join us and learn about how we do it. None of these options are cheap. It all takes time and money, but if you want to do it right, it's very important to work with an experienced person. Not only should your team know the design, the drawing, the engineering, and the construction, but they should know how to work with the county to help get the plans approved. Very, very important. If they don't know how to work the county, they're just going to get lots of questions. And if they can't answer those questions with the county, you're going to be hitting walls. If the county won't let you do it, you can't do it. So find someone that can work with the county. Okay, let's go into the basic concepts when designing and natural building the code. So, talk to a natural builder that has done structure to code in your state. If you're not fortunate enough to have a natural builder that's done a structure to code, you again can contact us. Our buildings should be able to pass any state. But there are a lot of natural builders right now. It's an amazing industry that's growing significantly. A lot of great people doing amazing things. So you should be able to find someone in your state that's doing natural building. And if you don't, you can contact us and we can reach out to Cop Cottage, who has a great depth of information about lots of students who've come through there and are doing amazing work around the country and around the world. Find someone that can help you with drawings, blueprints, that has done natural building design or knows how to build them to code. So, again, designers, builders, architects, it's important for them to understand how to uh, show the details, how the straw bales are being connected, how they're being attached, how the load is being transferred, where the shear is coming from the bales, from the plaster, from the lath. Lots of details that we'll cover in further classes, but it's important when you're starting to work with somebody that they know what to do. And otherwise, it's going to be a big headache later on for the builder looking at the drawings and they're going to be confused or they're not going to understand why the designer or the architect did what they did, especially if it just doesn't make sense. Have a design, blueprints, and details on how the natural building will be constructed before talking to the engineer. So, again, if you have a natural builder that you're working with, someone that's done this before, they'll be able to answer questions from the engineer. You're not going to know if you haven't done this before, you don't have the experience, then even with the drawings in hand, you may not be able to answer the question. So just have that person in your back pocket. Find someone that can help you navigate the permitting process that has experience with the county and educating the municipalities on natural building the code. So great if you have an engineer, great if you have an architect, great if you have a builder. But if they don't know how to communicate with the county, if they don't know how to educate them on what we are doing as natural builders to make sure that we are following the rules and that we are building to their code standards, then they're not going to approve the building. So it's important to educate them. Okay, moving on. Preparing the plans for the county for the permitting process. So each building department will have a checklist of all their requirements that need to be on the plans. So it's important for you. You can go there ahead of time. You can get these checklists so that you can hand it to your designer. You can hand it to your person who's doing the drawings. You can hand it to the architect, the engineer, so they know all the steps that need to be done on the plans. An owner, designer, and builder can find out what they need to provide in terms of the design and following the codes that are required for the construction process. So those checklists are going to be super helpful, but there's also additional information that you need to have on hand. It's important that the homeowner or the natural builder, the consultant, understand the checklist so that it can be looked at, confirmed, and that all the documentation can be provided before submitting the plans to the county to the engineer. So there's a lot of problems that happen when you submit the plans and you have not checked to make sure it includes everything that's required. It is important that the homeowner understands how much time it takes to make sure all of the steps are done right and how important it is to have someone on their team that understands the process. So, the design process can take a minimum of a month up to 3 months. The engineering process can take a minimum of a month up to 3 months. The building permitting process can take 3 months. So you're looking at minimum 6 months, 4 to 6 months before you're able to start getting your permit. It takes a long time. In some cases, we've been working on it with the county for 6 to 9 months before we can break ground. So it's important to give yourself time. Um, it's very frustrating to be contacted by someone who just bought a piece of land and they're ready to start building in spring and it's January and then we have 3 months to get everything done. It's just not possible. So I always try to be upfront and just say this is how long the process takes, and this is the quickest, and this is the longest, and it's going to be somewhere in between. So understand that. Ask your county, ask your experienced builders. The process once you submit the plans to the county. Okay, there are different departments that the plan gets reviewed by. So there's the planning, the environmental, the structural, and the building. You can submit in person or you can submit online. Once all the plans are reviewed, each department will add comments to your plans, to your review, and these comments are called corrections. To avoid having a lot of corrections, use someone that can assure the plans are submitted with all or most of the documents needed. Again, that goes back to that checklist. There are many corrections. Um, there are always corrections, especially in natural building, because they may not understand how you are building it and not familiar with the details in natural building plans. So give yourself time for those corrections and don't get too frustrated with the designer, the builder, especially if he's a natural builder designer like us, because even though we include everything, sometimes they don't see it, they don't understand it, and we have to highlight it, put a circle on it, say, here it is. You missed it the first time, but here it is. Once the corrections are approved and there are no more corrections, then the permit fees are due and the permit will be opened. Very great day when that happens. The inspection process. Um, when to call an inspection. So once you have the permit open, when do you call inspection? So typically you'll have another checklist and it'll have all the inspections called inspection card. And that inspection card will be able to tell you when to call for inspections. So we don't need to go into too many details here, but it's important to know that. Your builder should know that. What do you find? What do you do if you fail an inspection? So if you fail an inspection, typically the inspector will tell you what you need to do to fix it. It's never a huge thing. It's just something that's overlooked by the builder, or it's something that's on the plans that isn't necessary, but because it's on the plans, you're required to do it. The builder may not even need to do it, but because it's on the plans and your plans are your contract, it has to be done. So Again, that goes back to have your plans be reviewed by your builder before you submit to the county, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen architects put stuff on the plans that don't need to get done. That just doesn't need it. The engineer says it's pointless. This is like two two shear walls or double-sided shear walls. Like why? Single shear walls are fine. So just, have your builder look at it before you submit it. So it'll save you lots of time and it'll save you lots of money. Tracking your inspections. So keeping the communication open between the owner, the builder, and the county inspector, really important. Who is liable if an inspection fails, and how to make sure the person takes responsibility. So when you're working with subcontractors, they are responsible if something fails. If you're doing it yourself, you're responsible. Just know that. It's important to have contracts between you and your subcontractors. It's important to have contracts between you and the natural builder, you and the builder, you and the general, so that it's spelled out clearly what happens if an inspection fails, who's responsible for what, where does the liability land in terms of who's paying for the corrections, who's paying for additional materials, who's paying for the time to fix it. Important to read that in the contract, have that in the contract. If you don't see it in the contract, you need to ask for it to be in the contract. Very important. Or you add it yourself. And it should be the builder. It should be the person who's doing it. If they don't know how they're doing it, if they're not doing it to code, well, that's, first of all, that's terrible. Secondly, it may just be like a new code, something that changed that they weren't aware of, but they need to take responsibility because they should have known. They are the professionals. If you're doing it yourself, it's your first time and you screw up, well, it's your liability, your money, your time. You take care of it. What happens when all inspections are passed and you are ready to close the permit? So once you get your final inspection, man, it's celebration time. Not seeing the county anymore, not seeing the inspector anymore. I can't tell you how awesome that feeling is, especially with a natural building. Just it's every time it's a great feeling. But you have to make sure you keep all your records. So, how long should you keep documents of the building um, in possession? So, the building process, there's lots of steps. You have lots of manuals. You have so much information, plans, permits, all this stuff. It really does matter. So, you want to make sure you keep it somewhere safe. You want to make sure you keep it for a minimum of 10 years, but really you should keep it for the life of the home until you sell it, because really you want to give those documents to the buyer. So, don't lose it. Be organized. Have a folder, have several folders, have a filing cabinet, have a desk devoted to all the paperwork that's going to be coming. Get yourself organized. Have every month billing to be on file. Keep all the receipts. Keep everything that you are buying for. And then your builder is going to do that automatically because they have to for their tax purposes. So they will give you the information in terms of warranties, and then they'll give you what you need to have on hand to be able to get those warranties. And then if something goes wrong with the building, you'll be able to contact them. They'll know who the subs are to fix it. And then you have up to 10 years in California. You have up to 10 years for any structural or building warranty that the builders do. If it's something like appliances and something that's not have to do with them building itself, that's up to you. Okay, moving on. All right, we're going to conclude the class here. So the design process is the first step. It's important to not settle until it's perfect. So until you have the design you want, built for what you need now, but always plan for addition. Passive solar design is the key in natural building. Help keep the home warm in the winter and cool in the summer. Find a designer, an architect, or a natural builder consultant that can help you with the construction process before you submit to the engineer, and especially before you submit to the county. Make sure some of your team members understand the building permit process and can help review the plans before submitting to the county to avoid any costly delays and corrections. It is your if it's your first time building a natural building to code, please contact us for free. We will consult with you. We help homeowners, architects, engineers, and builders. We love what we do and we do what we love, and we're happy to help. We have a we have a half hour free consultation for anyone. In addition, I mean, typically sometimes it goes way longer, but it's just what we have to say, half hour free. And then in addition, if you need additional consultation, we can create a contract. We can talk about the process. We can kind of help you through that. If you're looking to have someone design it, we have that capability as well. And if you're in California, we have engineers, we have builders, we have subcontractors. If you're outside of California, we can help you with the drawings, we can help you with the blueprints, and we can find engineers to educate in your area. And we can also come to you, help you coordinate with subcontractors because the way that we design our buildings, subcontractors can do the foundation, they can do the framing, they can do the windows, the roofing, the trim work, and then we can have workshops come in to do the straw bales. We have regular stucco guys can do the plaster on the outside, plaster on the inside, but we can come in and do the straw bales. We can come in and do the leveling coat for the clay, and then we can help with the scratch coat. And typically, we can do all those with workshops to help you save some money and to help educate your community and to help you so that you can maintain your home after we're gone. Well, thank you again for joining me on this class. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you got some good information out of it. I look forward to our next class. And if you have any questions or you would like to reach out to us, please visit naturallivingschool.com or you can email us at info@naturallivingschool.com. All right. Talk to you soon.